I think it's almost 2 months ago that I sent you a video. Actually, I just sent you a copy of a video or a link to a video by Stephen Covey about the principle of proactivity. But I promised to send a version of my own, or at least a short video, kind of amplifying what he teaches in his video. And anyway, so I here on vacation, had a few minutes, wanted to keep my promise. Not that necessarily anybody else wants me to keep that promise, but I'm going to do it anyway. Because I think what I emailed you with that link was that there was something that he says in his book that I questioned, and that is that a person who is proactive is 5,000% more influential than somebody who's not proactive. And so that's part of what I want to share today, as I have come to believe that's true from my own personal experiences, and also a story that I like to share with my class that is not from Stephen Covey, so I presume you have not heard the story before. So I'm going to skip through some of my slides that I use when I teach my Success Strategies class, but want to share some of my thoughts and experiences with you. Here are, I believe, this first video is the one that the link that I sent you from Dr. Covey. There's some others here. Here's one that's not, he didn't make, but somebody made based on his principles about what he calls the 90-10 principle, and that is there's about 10% of what happens to us in life that we don't control. We simply don't control. But 90% of what happens to us in life, he believes we do control. And of course that varies depending on where you live, under which government you live, under your physical capabilities, all sorts of things. But more or less he's saying that most of what we experience in life we do have some influence over, and we can control in some ways. And he shares some stories, some of which he may have shared in that video and I may reshare, but I'll try to get to new material as quickly as possible. Simon Sinek is a rising star in the kind of the self-help arena, and he has an interesting video as well you might want to look at. And Will Smith has a very short one, but he also is besides being an award-winning actor, he is a good motivational speaker as well. So all the videos you might want to take a look at. And in fact, regarding this, Will Smith says, to really be effective in life, you may have to be a little bit self-delusional. And his point is basically you have to be proactive. You have to actually believe that you can do anything, that you can change things, that you can make a difference. And that may seem like it's self-delusional, but then obviously he's done a lot of amazing things because he believed he could do them. He's taken on very challenging roles in the movies he's made and in life. So I think he is a good example of somebody who is proactive, and he worked really hard at his craft to achieve what he wants to achieve, believing that he can make a difference. I'm skipping through some. I think Dr. Covey talked about that principles are eternal, and that his habits are based on what he believes are eternal principles. And he talks about a great battleship that was going through the fog, and they saw a flashing light. In those days, they were signaling with flashing lights using Morse code, and there was a flashing, and they saw a light. One of the seamen first class on the battleship saw a flashing light, and he signaled to it to turn aside, that they were coming through, and the signal came back to him, and no, you turn aside. And so he went and woke up the admiral and said, there's a ship ahead of us that won't turn aside in this fog. And so the admiral comes up kind of angry, And it has them signal him again. This is Admiral Hornblower, whatever his name was, and you need to turn aside. And they get signaled back. No, you turn aside, 20 degrees, whatever. And so now he said he's really mad. He said, "We are a battleship. You turn aside." And he gets the message back, "We are a lighthouse." And he says, just in that same way, you can't battle eternal principles. And he uses an example also of if Congress or Parliament tries to outlaw the law of gravity, it's not going to work. There are just some laws and some principles that cannot be overridden by our desires. And he believes that all of his habits are based on eternal principles. Of course, they're based basically on the restored gospel. Everything that he teaches, he learned in Sunday school, basically, but he teaches it in a much better way, and his doctoral dissertation was based on this idea of finding, basically creating a book. And he did a lot of research into old manuscripts that taught self-help sort of principles in accomplishing that. I'm going to move ahead quickly on this. One of the things he talks about is that sometimes we're kind of the subjects of a social mirror. We believe what people tell us, who we are and what we're capable of, and we have to fight that. He talks about different theories of psychology and sociology that we're controlled by genetically, and that we don't really control our destiny, that we think the way we think, we do things we do based on DNA in essence. Other people say it's more psychological determinism. Others think it's environmental. There's argue about this, and he says none of that determines our future. We determine our future if we choose to. And he talks about the going back to Pavlov's dogs. You can teach them to do whatever by training them. I've seen a YouTube video where they train a mouse or a rat, I can't remember. It's either a very big mouse or a small rat, how to play basketball. And they just, at first they put this basketball in there, and when it got close, they gave it something to eat. And then pretty soon after, teaching it that, gee, if I get close to that basketball, I'm going to get something to eat. Well, then he had to touch the basketball. So they learned to touch the basketball, and they learned to pick up the basketball. And gradually, very gradually, they taught it to pick up the basketball and put it into a hoop before they would feed it. And so it's possible through the stimulus response relationship that you can train dogs and rats and all sorts of animals to do amazing things. And so the idea, a lot of the psychologists and stuff thought basically people are the same. We're just trained animals, so to speak. One of those who believed that was Viktor Frankl. And he was a psychiatry professor from Austria. And he, Dr. Covey, in the video I said, you may have talked about Dr. Frankl, but Dr. Frankl was a professor, and he was also Jewish, and during the Hitler years, he and his family were put into a concentration camp. And he saw loved ones dying in the concentration camps, and some people just died because they just gave up. They had no will to continue. And others died, they were killed by the Nazis directly. Some were just worked to death, whatever. And he was laying there one day and on his cot, and he achieved a sort of freedom that he hadn't really thought about, and that is he escaped from the concentration camp to his family's cabin in the mountains, in his mind, not in reality. in his mind, he was free. And so he escaped to the family cabin, and there he enjoyed the smells and sounds and sights that he enjoyed prior to being arrested. And then he also went to his classroom where he enjoyed teaching his students. And that gave him happiness to think about that. And so he thought about the things that he was free to do, even in a Nazi concentration camp. And pretty soon he decided, talked to some other very smart people there, and they decided to start their own university. And so they shared with each other, and they taught each other, prepared each other for greater success when they got out of that concentration camp, if they ever did. And Viktor Frankl and others did. And ultimately he, as a professor previously, he had believed that people really had little control of their thinking, of their actions, of their destiny, that they were products of maybe a combination of genetics and psychology and sociology, and but that ultimately they had little choice in the matter. But his experience in concentration camp taught him otherwise, that there was something in between stimulus and response. That as much as he might have hated the Nazis, as much as he might have wanted to die at times, he found an escape. And he even got to the point where he was friendly with the guards. He realized they didn't want to be there any more than he wanted to be there. Or maybe he might have wanted to not be there a little more. But regardless, they didn't want to be there either. And so it gave him new understanding and a different way of looking at things, different perspective. Ultimately, he wrote a book about this principle of self-determination and proactivity that he had come to understand and believe as a prisoner in a concentration camp. And that changed his life. Another person you might think of as Anwar Sadat became the president of Egypt, ultimately signing the first peace accord between any of the Islamic states and Israel. And part of his process was also being thrown into prison when he attempted a coup against the king of Egypt, and he was thrown into prison, and that gave him a chance to think about what he really wanted to accomplish in life and what would be appropriate for his country if they ever did have a democracy, things like that. And ultimately, after years of saying never, never, never would there be peace with Israel, never, never, never could they ever coexist, he ultimately did create a peace treaty. Ultimately, he was assassinated by another Muslim who disagreed with peace with Israel. But from our eternal perspective, I think we would agree, did the right thing. And he followed his principles, even though he died for his principles. Mahatma Gandhi was first imprisoned in South Africa when he was working there, and again fighting for freedom there, and ultimately led the movement to free India with a bloodless coup, so to speak, with a bloodless opposition to the British. That also inspired people like Martin Luther King, who also had great, made dramatic changes in America because of his peaceful protest. Another one is Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who was imprisoned in a work camp in Siberia. And he, as I understand the story, he ended up writing one of his great novels one page at a time, because all he had was one piece of paper and one pencil, and he would write a page, memorize it, write another page, and memorize it during that time. But all these people achieved greatness in some of the direst, most terrible circumstances in prison. As one of the keys to I kind of laugh to my students and say, hey, if we haven't been in prison, we have no chance of being great. We need to go to prison. I'm not hoping to do that, but It is interesting how many people have gone to prison and come out, or gone to concentration camps or work camps or whatever, and come out and achieve greatness after experiencing that. Certainly, all of them, display proactivity in the face of a situation where they had what most of us would consider very little control. Oops, there we go. Sometimes you can tell by just the way people act and even the words they say, whether they are proactive or not. A proactive person takes responsibility for everything in his life, certainly anything that he can control, and he tries to control everything. He make a change no matter what his deficiencies, what his limitations are, seeming limitations. Reactive person always blames somebody else, circumstances, and so forth for obstacles and problems and not achieving anything. Again, I think most, at least leaders in the restored gospel, are naturally proactive by their, and I shared with you the presentation, I believe, on how the church compares to other people in other churches or who don't go to church and so forth, and how even among people who are active in civil development and stuff, we give way more of our time and way more of our money than any other group that the University of Pennsylvania could identify. In a study that was not controlled by the church, it was done by University of Pennsylvania professors and so forth. So, being proactive is a mark of a disciple of Jesus Christ. But I think we need to understand just how powerful that concept is, which is why I'm sharing this with you. So Dr. Covey says that this is his proactive model that he shares. Ultimately, that we have stimuli that may push us to do certain responses, but in between our stimulus and response, we have a self-awareness, we have our own imagination, as we were talked about before, our conscience of what's right or wrong, our independent will. And so just because we have a stimulus in here, we can exert all of these things to determine our own response. Already talked about that. And so being proactive means basically we're taking initiative. We make things happen. We are solution sellers. We use our resourcefulness and our initiative to achieve success for ourselves, for our families, for our church, whatever. We take action. We take initiative. And it's like building muscles, he says, that we can build our proactive muscles. And it's much more than just positive thinking. Much more than what Will Smith said of being delusional. It's being creative and resourceful. It is having a goal, it's having what we want to achieve clearly in our mind. But ultimately, we do have to exercise our creativity and resourcefulness, which is basically part of some of the muscles we build as we build our proactivity. And what I was saying earlier is sometimes you can just tell by the language whether somebody's reactive or proactive. Reactive people are saying things like, there's nothing I can do, that's just the way I am, he makes me so mad, she makes me so mad, I could be doing great things if my wife were more supportive. And of course, that's not true. She's very supportive. She puts up with a lot for me. But, that's what an excuse is that reactive people might say. Whereas a proactive person is saying, let's look at our alternative. Let's, I can choose a different approach, or I can control my own feelings, so forth. They take responsibility. Okay, I'm going to skim forward. This is an important concept, I think. He says, all of us have a circle of concern, but we also have a circle of influence. Now, at first, our circle of influence might be quite small, but again, as we exercise our proactive muscles, we can expand that circle of influence so that pretty soon it looks maybe more like this. And you have, again, you control what you do, and what you can. You have some direct control over something, some direct influence, you could say, some indirect influence, and other areas maybe you have no influence, or you think you don't. But as you work at this, you suddenly have influence you didn't know you had, or you build new influence that you did not have before. A joke, but anyway, I'll let you read that. Anyways, rather than saying something like, oh darn, I was just beginning to take charge of my life, we need to be more like Mahatma Gandhi. I thought I'd just share a couple of experiences I had. There's one that he talks about, but I think he may have talked about it in his video, but anyway, I'm going to talk a little bit about some personal experiences I had. When I first got to KeyMap University in 2008, I was anxious to make a difference. And so they sent out a notice asking if anybody wanted to participate in the leadership of the KeyMap International Research Conference. Now, I was in the College of Social Science, and this was a function of the College of Business, and who had always controlled it and so forth. But they were opening it up to anybody else that wanted to give their free labor, basically. And so when I got there was about a dozen people that had volunteered to participate in the organizing committee, and that was several months. It might have even started like in December, and the event was in April, so they had a lot of plans to make. And so as we went through those next few months, they might ask, would somebody help with this, or somebody help with that? And being a proactive disciple of Jesus Christ, I would volunteer to do this and that. And I never really, I had no goal of being of any great influence. I just, wanting to serve and just doing the sort of things that good members of the church do, basically. And when I volunteered to do something, I did it. That seems like a pretty simple concept that we're taught to do, right? Okay, I'll volunteer to do this, and I will actually do it. I won't just say I'll do it. So I never really thought anything about it. And then we got to April, or maybe the last week of March. So we had 1 week before our conference. And so here were the dozen or so people, including the dean of the college and the chair of the organizing committee. And they said, okay, we have 7 things that have to be done right now in the next few days. And Ken, we need you to do 4 of them. And that was the first time it occurred to me that they had become somewhat dependent on me. Even though I didn't feel like I was doing anything special, that just volunteering occasionally and doing what I promised to do had made it so they did not trust the other 11 people to do some of these most important things. They only trusted me to do them, which was kind of, like I say, was surprising and kind of funny to me, that I had to do 4 of them and the other 11 people had to do 3 of them. But certainly I did them, but I couldn't help but laugh to myself. And it was just one of those things that I realized as I taught principles of success strategy, that you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. We're talking about very smart people in that room. You can be the dumbest person in the room, but if you volunteer and you actually do it, if you're the most dependable person, people will learn to depend on you. You can be a really dumb person like me, and they will come to depend on you, and that will increase your sphere of influence. As Dr. Covey talks about, that's just exercising your proactivity. And yes, using some resourcefulness and so forth, but I do not think I did anything that somebody else in that room couldn't have done. I don't think that for a second. I did offer, and I did do it. So anyway, the day, or I guess the day before the conference was to begin, it was to begin in a big, what we called the Great Hall, that held 500 people. And I get a call first off from the chair of the committee, and he says, "Ken, you have to be the MC. You have to be the master of ceremonies for this opening ceremony, opening session." And I said, "Why do I need to? You're the chair of the committee. You should do it. Either that or the chair of the college, or the dean of the college. He should do it." And I said, "No, Ken, you have to do it." And being obedient, okay, I guess I'll do it. And I'm not a great MC, but being a proactive member of the church, when you're asked to do something, you just do it. And so I agreed to do it. And then about an hour later, I get a call from, apparently they weren't communicating with each other, but they had decided together. So the dean of the college, or the business college, again, I was in the social science college, but the dean of the business college calls me up and says, "Ken, you have to be the MC." And I didn't bother to tell him that the chair of the committee had already called, because I thought, well, here's my chance to get out of it. And so I tried to tell him that he should be anyway, he had already decided, they had already decided I needed to be the MC. So I emceed it. And so afterwards, we gathered on the steps up into the Great Hall to take a photo. So there were like 50 people there or something, and being one of the taller people, and I take my normal position in the back row at the top of the stairs, and pretty soon people started shouting, "Ken, come up here in front. You're in charge of this thing." And I just laughed at it. I'm not in charge of anything. I'm nobody. I'm just a person somebody just stuck up there in front of people. And so I stayed where I was at. But it was just one of those experiences in my life that helped me understand what Dr. Covey was talking about. And if you're proactive, your sphere of influence will grow. And over the years after that, I was the first person not a member of the College of Business to become the chair of the overall organizing committee. I did that for 2 years, and we did a good job, and it was nice. But so that again expanded my sphere of influence. I'm going to talk. Well, I guess I can tell the story now. Another thing that happened was a Peace Corps worker came to me, and she had the idea of having a conference of leaders of NGOs, non-government organizations, and to, with them, co-author a book about the needs of NGOs in Central Asia, and particularly to share their insights, because she had a feeling like the international funding organizations were not paying enough attention to people on the front line, so to speak. So she thought she was inviting also people from international donor organizations to come and to get some input from people on the front lines, and that again, we'd write this book and share it with the donors and other people to try to somehow improve the way NGOs were operating, specifically in Kazakhstan. And so we did that. She came to me, this Peace Corps worker came to me and gave me her idea, and her name was Kirsten. I said, "Kirsten, I think it's a really good idea, but I'm only going to do it." She came to me because I have experience as not a newspaper, but also a book publisher and editor. So somebody recommended me because of that. And so I said, "Kirsten, I'm willing to do it, but on one condition, and that is we set this up with the idea that it will continue indefinitely into the future, forever, as far as we're concerned. I know you have to go home. You're ending your service as a Peace Corps worker. But as we go into this, I anticipate that we have a session and talk to people who come to it about what they think about continuing this yearly conference and publishing a book every year and so forth, and providing other support services." And so that's what we did. And anyway, it's still going. That was 10 years ago. And we started that first year with a $10,000 Peace Corps grant. It's now received about $10 million, and it's now spread to 8 countries throughout Central Asia. And we published 10 books. I've turned it over to a kind of an association of NGOs to run it, and so I participate frequently over the internet, or when I'm there in person. I participate. I teach workshops or give a talk at the opening ceremony, stuff like that. But it's still going and it's still doing good things, and enough so that the U.S. government through USAID has done most of the funding. Not the first 2 years. We got a grant from the Norwegian embassy. We got another grant from a different U.S. agency. We got a grant from the United Nations and so forth, until USA decided they wanted to adopt it and expand it. So that's where it went from there. And with these things, again, we're talking about spreading your influence. Pretty soon, the Chamber of Commerce, I was invited to go to that, and so the American Chamber of Commerce in Kazakhstan, and they had I particularly participated in a couple of their work groups, they called them. One was the work group for social corporate responsibility, and so I participated in that, and they had some activities where they wanted people to teach at a kind of a business like an incubator, teach people success strategies and stuff. So I taught at that and did some other stuff. Again, not thinking anything, and so pretty soon the chairman of that work group resigned. And they wanted me to take over, and it just kept growing. And in fact, I came, and Dr. Covey talked about this too. It's possible that your circle of influence might actually become greater than your circle of concern, and that is something I experienced. I got a call from the secretary of a new ambassador from the UK, and she said the ambassador wanted to come and meet with me. And I thought, well, she's going to meet with a bunch of different faculty members at KeyMap University, and probably take a tour and spend some time with the president and so forth. So she got there. We spent about an hour together, and I was sharing her my insights. And turned out she had no other appointments at the university, which surprised me. And so I had to almost strong-arm her to go meet the president. And he was in a meeting with the deans and department chairs, and so she got to meet everybody. And then she left. She just went there to meet with me, which I had no idea why. But somewhere along the way, somebody decided I was a good person to talk to. I don't know why. And so after that, the British ambassador, the embassy would invite me to different functions and stuff because I was somehow in their list. Towards the end of my time there in Kazakhstan, I was called by the National Investment Corporation, which is a subsidiary to the National Bank of Kazakhstan. And they said they wanted me to become a consultant to help them to learn how to communicate with people, like investors or companies that they wanted to invest in. The National Investment Corporation is responsible for investing $80 billion of oil money from Kazakhstan into investments outside of Kazakhstan specifically, but at the same time to try to convince people outside of Kazakhstan to invest in Kazakhstan. So they weren't allowed to, but they were supposed to try to help find other people who would invest into Kazakhstan. Anyway, so that was an interesting experience. And again, I have no idea why they called me. And so, helping the UK ambassador to kind of get oriented in Kazakhstan or consulting with the National Investment Corporation was beyond my circle of concern. I never even thought about it. But the circle of influence grows with proactivity until certainly, I would say that probably Dr. Covey, he had to turn down a lot of stuff. He just simply couldn't do everything that people. So, he's an example of somebody who had so many opportunities, so many people asked him to do stuff that he had to just turn stuff away. That has never become that big of a deal to me, but I understand from my little experience how some people have just get overwhelmed by other people wanting them to do stuff. Their circle of influence is way beyond their circle of concern. Okay, and basically he says that how to build your circle of influence is, it's pretty easy. It's easy to plan and promise, but if it's harder to actually keep promises, commitments, and reach goals, but that is how you build your circle of influence. The power of making and keeping commitment is the essence of developing basic, effective habits. So that is, I think, the key. Now, I wanted to, again, talking about this, building the circle of influence. I want to finish with this. And this is, again, the story that is not something that Dr. Covey uses, but one that I found elsewhere about Johnny the Bagger, who's a young man who had Down syndrome. And so I'm going to I told that story. I'm going to embed a video where I share that story. I did the video actually as part of the opening exercise or the opening session for the annual conference of the Insights in Development Conference, which is what I co-founded with the Peace Corps worker. And so I did that after I moved here. I sent them a video to show at their opening session. So I'm going to embed that in so you'll understand some of the words relate to that, into insights. Anyway, I'll embed that into this. But this, the bottom line that I share with that is that even somebody who has mental, limitations, his job was to bag groceries, and you'll see in the story that I'm going to share with you that he changed the future of his store. And I would suggest even beyond that, because his store was part of a chain. And what he accomplished as a bagger would have been used as a powerful example for the other stores of that chain. So I'll share that, insert that, and share that. Anyway, I do believe that as disciples of Jesus Christ, one of the most important principles we learn, and this is why Dr. Covey considered this was the foundation of all of his habits, his 7 habits, was that you have to be proactive. You have to believe that you can make a difference. You have to commit to make a difference. And if we do that, we can. Even Johnny the Bagger can, and even somebody like me can. You just keep doing stuff and being dependable. And I know you guys are all dependable. But this is something you might be able to use as you talk to other people to help encourage other new members of the church or others to accept the challenges of discipleship. And so if anything from what I'm teaching or what Dr. Covey's teaching is helpful in that, in inspiring others, or just sometimes we all need to be self-inspired too, and might help all of us to think about the stuff as we think about what we can accomplish in our lives in being proactive and again, dedicated, proactive disciples of Jesus Christ. And I share these ideas with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Hi, I'm Ken Harvey. I'm one of the co-founders of the Insights into Development project. To be really effective in civil development, you need to be proactive. I think I'm somewhat proactive by nature, and I think most people who are involved in civil development are. I teach a class at the university, at Xiamen University, Malaysia, where I am now, that is called Success Strategies. And I use as one of my main textbooks, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. This book, as you may know, has sold something like 50 million copies in 30 different languages. He came to Almaty my first year there in 2008 and presented, and the business people in Almaty paid $3,000 a piece to attend his workshop. So he was quite on demand, so to speak.
I had a chance to meet him while he was there, and that was a great privilege. He died shortly thereafter when he was riding his bicycle and was hit by a car. One of the things that Dr. Covey says that really hit me about a year or so ago when I was teaching this class of success strategies, he says that somebody who's proactive, somebody as opposed to reactive, proactive, somebody who takes charge and believes that he can change himself and change the world, so to speak, that somebody like that is 5,000% more effective than somebody who's not proactive. And I kind of question that. The idea I want to share with you today is the importance of being proactive and always looking and believing you can change the world, so to speak, change yourself and change the world. And I want to tell a story. And I hope I'm not taking too long, but I want to tell you a story that I tell my students in my class that has helped me to illustrate the importance of being proactive. This is a story about Johnny the Bagger. And this is told by Barbara Glantz, who is a customer service expert. And it's a true story. And I'm going to tell it in her words. A few years ago, I was hired by a large supermarket chain to lead a customer service program to build customer loyalty. During my speech, I said, every one of you can make a difference and create memories for your customers that will motivate them to come back. Put your personal signature on the job. Think about something you can do for your customer to make them feel special, a memory that will make them come back. About a month after I had spoken, I received a call from a 19-year-old bagger. A bagger is somebody who's just putting groceries into a bag for you at the grocery store. His name is Johnny. He proudly informed me that he was a Down syndrome individual and told me his story. I liked what you talked about, he said, but at first I didn't think I could do anything special for our customers. After all, I'm just a bagger. Then I had an idea, Johnny said. Every night after work, I'd come home and find a thought for the day. If I didn't find a saying I liked, he added, I just think one up. When Johnny had a good thought for the day, his dad helped him set it up on the computer and print multiple copies. Johnny cut out each quote and signed his name on the back. Then he'd bring them to work the next day. When I finished bagging someone's groceries, I put my thought for the day in their bag and say, thanks for shopping with us. It touched me to think that this young man with a job most people would say is not important had made it important by creating precious memories for all of his customers. A month later, the store manager called me. You won't believe what happened. When I was making my rounds today, I found Johnny's checkout line was 3 times longer than anyone else's. It went all the way back down the frozen food aisle. So I quickly announced, we need more cashiers, get more lanes open, as I tried to get people to change lanes. But no one would move. They said, no, it's okay. We want to be in Johnny's lane. We want his thought for the day. The store manager continued, it was a joy to watch Johnny delight the customers. I got a lump in my throat when one woman said, I used to shop at your store once a week, but now I come in every time I go by because I want to get Johnny's thought for the day. A few months later, the manager called me again. Johnny has transformed our store. Now when the floral department has a broken flower or unused corsage, they find an elderly woman or a little girl and pin it up. Everyone's having a lot of fun creating memories. Our customers are talking about us. They're coming back and they're bringing their friends. A wonderful spirit of service spread throughout the entire store, and all because Johnny chose to make a difference. Johnny's idea wasn't nearly as innovative as it was loving. It came from his heart. It was real. That's what touched his customers, his peers, and those who read this story. Great service comes from the heart. will you be a Johnny today? I tell the story because, as I said, it illustrates how much more effective proactivity can make anyone. Here was Johnny, probably the lowest IQ of anybody who worked at the store. Definitely was. He wasn't the manager. He'll never be the manager. He'll never be a cashier. But who's the one that changed the store? Who's the one that got more customers to come? Who's the one who actually instituted what this expert told them to do? It was Johnny. Johnny did what the manager did not do. Johnny did what the cashiers did not do. Johnny did what other people in the store did not do. And Johnny changed the entire future of that store. To me, this tells, like I said, this is important for us to understand as individuals, that we need to be proactive. We need to believe that we can make change, and we need to act on it, just like Johnny did. And if we do, if we're proactive, we can change the world. Have a great conference. I wish you all the best. Thank you.